That needs to be the absolute last time that you don't have enough witnesses to carry us at least until 5. And if it happens again and there is something less than an earthquake, an 8-car pileup, somebody died, 3 people died, and so none of the witnesses were available, I may just say you can't have that witness, because at this point in this incredible...
And we are back. Thank you all for watching. Go ahead and hit that like button in anticipation of an excellent video today, y'all. I removed all kinds of long gaps and breaks and stuff for you. So go ahead and hit that like button for me, please. This is going to be a very good video, y'all. It's extended, so it is a kind of sit down, get comfortable, and watch. You're going to see a serious back and forth and even a tag team effort. What I noticed watching this video, or watching court today, and what you'll notice watching this video, is Brian Steele, he's going to tag Shart in. Brian Steele's going to hit a bit of a wall, and he's going to basically tag Shart in, and Shart's going to come in. Y'all remember like wrestling with the tag team? Shart's going to come in energized, and he's just going to take the ball all the way to the hoop, so to speak, to mix my metaphors. What I realize is that Love, she doesn't have anybody she can tag in. She's all by herself out there. So whether you love her or you hate her, she doesn't have anybody she can tag in. So you're going to see what happens today when Brian Steele tags Shart in, and then Brian Steele, he gains his energy and he comes back himself too. So definitely worth the watch. I think at the end of the day, this was embarrassing for Love. She lost today without a doubt, hands down. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Again, we appreciate you watching. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Were you able to hear that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's fair, that's accurate, looks true?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you were asking Mr. Copeland questions about a gray, potentially rental car Infiniti. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And this is within 8 hours approximately of the shooting of Mr. Donovan Thomas and the 2 other people, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you asked him those questions, Mr. Copeland was there because you had information, I believe, that the streets were calling his name about being involved in this crime, right?
Yes, sir.
So you gave him the opportunity through a conversation you had on the telephone. If he wants, he doesn't have to, but if he wants to come in and talk to you, that's what we're going to talk about, his possible being involved in the shooting, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, when he told you, no, he didn't know Mr. Maddox, no, there was nothing to do with a gray-colored Infiniti rental car, you had already, obviously, information that he may have been involved with that car. Is that fair to say?
Objection to that car. Sustained.
The car that I just referred to, the gray rental car Infiniti.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, he denied any knowledge or access to that type of vehicle that we just saw in Jeffrey Williams 241D, right?
Yes, sir.
And you had a reason to believe that he was not being truthful, correct?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, as to the improper form of the question.
Sustained.
You did not, at that point, you had information contrary to his denial, true?
Yes, sir.
Now, he also, at that same interrogation, meeting, interview, whatever you want to call it is fine, with Mr. Copeland, you also asked him where he was at and around the time of the shooting. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And he told you 2 places of interest. One is a McDonald's, right?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, mischaracterizes regarding at or around the time of the shooting.
Overruled.
Tells you about a McDonald's, right?
Yes, sir. He told me about McDonald's.
And that McDonald's, the jurors have seen pictures and they've heard the address, but we're talking about on Cleveland Avenue, fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And it's near a laundromat. If you're familiar with the area.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Near the laundromat, near the auto place, and across the street is other establishments, including a gas station convenience store. Fair?
Yes, sir.
And to your knowledge, at that time, were there cameras, when I say cameras, surveillance cameras, on the laundromat building?
I believe so there was.
Were there cameras on the McDonald's?
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Were there cameras on the auto parts store?
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Were there cameras across the street on the convenience store or gas station?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you went, I assume you followed up on that alibi, true?
Yes, sir.
When you went to those establishments, or did you go to those establishments?
Yes,
I object on the basis of assuming facts and evidence. There was no. The question was regarding an alibi and base. I think it's an improper question.
Did you go to those establishments?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you attempt to locate and ask for use subpoena power? The jurors may not use a search warrant to get any of those video surveillance cameras if they existed.
I went and checked to see the video footage. So if they had video footage that could be of use, then that's when I'll go and obtain a search warrant to indicate in the search warrant this is the time frame I'm looking for. But I believe at McDonald's, they already reached their 15-day mark. So the video footage, I think, was already overwritten, I believe.
Now, who did you already told the jury that you would take notes and put this all in your reports, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you have to do that. You have to document what you're doing, right?
Yes, sir.
Because sometimes cases are tried. In our case, we're 9 plus years after January 10th, 2015, right?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jurors whether you ever put in your report anywhere that you saw the video at the McDonald's or you spoke with somebody?
No, I believe I did not.
Is there a reason you did not put that detail in your report?
No, because I didn't ascertain any evidence from that. So that's why I didn't document in my report, but I had it in my notes.
Okay. How about your notes then? Where are your notes today?
I can't find my notepad.
And to be fair to the jury, I asked you about your notes previously. Fair?
Yes, sir.
And you said the same thing. You can't find it, right?
Yes, sir.
It's gone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, how about you mentioned McDonald's. How about the auto parts store? That video surveillance. Can you tell the jurors what you did to secure that surveillance on January 10th, 2015, the relevant period of time?
Same time, I believe I went out there maybe a couple of days later to look because I focused on the McDonald's since that was he was talking about. And I did not obtain any video from them either.
What did that person tell you? If you remember.
Objection as to hearsay.
Sustained.
Let me ask you this way. In your report, did you put anything about going to the auto parts store to inquire about their surveillance?
No, sir.
Okay. And it would be in your notes?
Yes, sir.
Notes are gone.
Yes, sir.
Can't find.
Can't find.
Okay.
Sustained.
Across the street, the convenience store gas station, their surveillance equipment. Did you go there and ask them for theirs?
I believe I was asking for theirs.
You did not?
I believe I did not.
Okay. And how about the laundromat across the street from the McDonald's?
I don't think their system was working at that time.
Do you remember who you spoke with?
No, can't remember the name.
And the same questions, it's not in your report, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You mentioned the green store. Do you know the true name of the green store by any chance?
No, sir, not offhand.
Okay, that's fine. But it's called the green store for the obvious reason that it was green?
Yes, sir.
All right. And how far, if you know, and if you don't know, just say, I'm not familiar, would you say the green store is from the location, God forbid, that Donovan Thomas was shot?
I want to say maybe a couple of blocks.
Okay. We're talking close, right?
Yes.
All right. Now, Mr. Copeland told you that on January 10th, 2015, when I say told you, I'm still sticking to the next day or 8 hours later. He told you also that he was at around the green store at around the time of Mr. Thomas being shot. Fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And are you aware, did you find out, did you look for it, whether the green store had surveillance cameras?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did the green store have surveillance cameras?
I believe their system was down also.
Okay. And who did you speak with?
I can't recall the person's name.
And did you put it's not in your report, fair to say?
No, sir.
And the notes are gone.
Yes, sir.
Now, surveillance footage is a good tool. Would you agree with that for
Yes,
law
sir.
enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Because a surveillance camera, if it's properly working, no one tampered with it, it doesn't really have any motivation or agenda. Is that fair?
Vague and
Overruled.
motivation.
True.
True.
And it just captures, if it's working properly, the images that it has in front of it, right?
True.
So we wouldn't really have to debate whether Mr. Copeland or others were at a McDonald's if we had that surveillance.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Now, with regards to Mr. Copeland, when he told you he made the denial of the infinity, remember what we just played? At that point in time, that got you, I assumed, so you tell us, that got you interested in maybe he's not being forthright. Is that fair?
Objection, Your Honor, as improper questions regarding.
Sustained.
You questioned whether he was being truthful with you. Is that fair to say?
Still, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you have questions on his answers that he denied the infinity?
Objection,
Bless you.
vague. Bless you.
I'm sorry.
I said objection vague. The question was, did you have questions?
Questions on his. Sustained.
How did you take it when Mr. Copeland said, no, I don't have anything to do and no memory of the infinity?
Objection, Your Honor, vague
Overruled on that basis.
Okay, how did I take it?
and
Yeah.
relevance, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you about Jeffrey Williams, okay? You found out that Jeffrey Williams rented a Corvette vehicle from Hertz Rental Car at the airport, fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And when I say rented, on or about January 6, 2015, something like that. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
If my day's wrong, I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
it's around that time, right?
Yes, sir.
And then the Infinity on around January 7th, 2015. Fair to say?
Okay. Did I find out if he rented it January 7th?
You found out later that
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams, in his name, there's an Infinity vehicle rented, right?
Yes, sir. Through the DA's office. Yes, sir.
Tell the jurors what evidence you have that Jeffrey Williams drove that Infinity rented vehicle.
Objection, Your Honor, regarding matters that are within the province of the jury in terms of evidence.
Rephrase.
Do you have any evidence to share with the
Rephrase.
jury?
That's the issue, that she's rephrased the question.
I think that's a proper question.
Rephrase the question.
I'm going to have to move on to another topic. Let me ask you about,
Do you want to approach from that?
sure. Yeah, I don't have any other questions. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, Miss. Yes, Miss Still.
Good to see you.
All right.
Same here, sir.
Ms. Shart, you're standing up. You have questions? Well, I mean, you're up and nobody else is, so I guess you can take your turn now and then we'll see whether anybody else has questions.
Investigator Thorpe, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
All right, my name is Max Shard. I represent Shannon Stillwell, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you have a copy of your report in front of you?
No, sir.
I don't, if Mr. Shar has one, I have one that he can use.
I believe it
doesn't matter.
And, Your Honor, may I just approach and bring it up? And I'm not asking Detective Thorpe to refer to it at all right now. I just want him to have it handy in case he needs to.
In the event, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Detective Thorpe, I'm going to ask you about October 19th of 2015.
Okay.
Okay? And that is the day, for reference. Do you know what happened on that day off the top of your head?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was the day that you spoke to the person who identified himself as Nicholas Robinson, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I'd like to talk to you about how that happened. Zone 1 Day Watch contacted you about having a person in custody, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were informed by your fellow officers that this person was named Nicholas Robinson.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's the way, to your understanding, this person identified himself to the police.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this Nicholas Robinson, he was in custody, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He had, on that day, on October 19, 2015, he had been arrested for a felony offense of theft by receiving, correct?
Yes, sir.
Objection, Your Honor, never mind, withdrawing the objection. All right.
And he was also had probation warrants.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The reality is, Nicholas Robinson was on his way to Rice Street, to 901 Rice Street, the Fulton County Jail.
Yes, sir.
And your fellow officers called you and said, this person may have information on something you're working on.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you decided, well, before I get there, on direct, as I understand your testimony, you testified that you did not think Nicholas Robinson was trying to help himself out by talking to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when I say help himself out, I'm talking about get consideration on charges that were now pending against him. Are we on the same page?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your testimony is you do not believe that he was trying to get help for
Objection
those.
asked and answered.
Overruled.
Is that your testimony? You don't believe he was trying to curry favor and get help with his pending charges?
Yeah, he may have, but that was not up to me.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Prior to October 19, 2015, prior to the date he had been arrested, had Nicholas Robinson ever come up to you and tried to give you information?
No, sir.
Okay. You decided to conduct a formal interview with this person who, to you, was known as Nicholas Robinson.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what was he wearing at that time of the formal interview? Was he in Rice Street Blues yet?
Relevance.
Sustained.
Okay. During the course of your interview with Nicholas Robinson, he continued to refer to himself as Nicholas Robinson, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you referred to him as Nicholas Robinson because you believed that was his identity, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he never corrected you.
Yes, sir.
And you all, without getting into what was said, you all spoke about the shooting of Donovan Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Okay. After this interview on October 19, 2015, Investigator Gaither informed you that this man's name was not, in fact, Nicholas Robinson, correct?
Yes, sir, but it was not after the interview. It was during the interview.
Okay, during the interview,
Yes, sir.
Investigator Gaither informed you that this man was not, in fact, Nicholas Robinson,
Correct.
and his name was Spencer Wright.
Correct.
Okay, and just to be clear, when we say during the interview, it was well into the interview. The interview hadn't just started. You guys had been talking for some time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this interview happened on October 19, 2015.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The warrants that you took out on the Donovan Thomas case were taken out. I know you testified that it was in November sometime.
Yes, sir.
It was actually taken out on October 20th, 2015. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about your reports. You've been in law enforcement for how long?
30 years and 8-9 months.
30 years and 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And all that with Atlanta Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you were brought on by the police department, before you even started you started on the streets, right?
Yes, sir.
On the streets. Okay, before you even started, they trained you on writing reports, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and throughout these 30 years of service you have with the Atlanta Police Department, you've obtained refreshers, taken refresher courses on writing reports, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You've been trained that your reports are to be accurate, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Accurate about evidence received,
Yes, sir.
accurate about things that have been told to you,
Yes, sir.
and accurate about the work you do on a case, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were supposed to document that work, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's also, these reports are also supposed to be complete, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, as per your training, work you've done on the case, your reports are to include a complete accounting of this work, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, you testified, and I'm not going to retread over things that Mr. Steele covered, but just briefly, you testified that you went to the McDonald's to search for surveillance video.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what date did you do that?
I believe it was not the 11th, I think it was the 12th. January 12th, I'm sorry, January 12th.
Okay, January 12th, you went to the McDonald's
Yes, sir, I believe it was.
to look for video,
Yes, sir. I can't recall exactly what day it was.
but you're pretty sure it was January 12th?
Yeah, it was in that time range. It wasn't like 2 or 3 months later.
Okay, did you not just testify that when you went to the McDonald's, they informed you that the video had been taped over?
Yes, most of it is on a 15-day cycle, so I don't never know when their 15-day cycle starts or ends.
Okay, but if you went on January 12th, that would have been 2 days.
Yeah, once again, I do not know when their 15-day. Everybody's system is different. May not follow the same 15 days like as in the months. It's like sometimes we get them and the video can be 2 hours behind, 2 hours ahead based on that particular location. So I do not know when their 15-day rotation was.
Who went with you?
I went by myself.
Who did you talk to at McDonald's? What was their name?
I cannot recall the name.
Did you record any of this?
No.
And none of this is in your report?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's not.
Yes, it's not.
Okay. The auto parts store. When did you go speak to the people at the auto parts store?
Maybe a couple of days later.
And who went with you?
Nobody.
And is that recorded?
No, sir.
And is that mentioned in your reports for APD?
No, sir.
When did you realize you lost your notepad?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance. When you realize.
I cannot recall. I knew that upon hearing the indictment, I went looking for the case file, and I could not locate the case file.
Did you not hand over your notepad to the DA's office when you handed over your file?
No.
Okay. Let's talk about the Green Store. The Green Store is formerly known as Mommy's Grocery. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's on Glen Street.
Yes, sir.
About 100 yards from where Glen intersects with McDaniel Street, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You would agree 1/4 mile from the scene where Donovan Thomas was shot?
Yeah, about a block and a half, 2 blocks maybe.
Block and a half to 2 blocks.
Yeah, probably.
To drive from the Green Store to that scene about a minute?
Probably less than that,
Less than a minute. Okay.
depending on the traffic.
Gotcha. Okay. As I understood on direct, your testimony about surveillance at the Green Store was no one told you they had surveillance.
Well, I believe they said the system was not working that day or something like that.
No, when I'm talking about what Ms. Love asked you, I believe you said that no one told you that they had surveillance. Is that not correct?
I can't recall, but I believe it was to that degree that the video system was not working, so they didn't have video.
Okay.
If the video system was not working, they didn't have video.
So your testimony isn't that no one told you they had surveillance. Your testimony is you went to the green store?
Correct.
Okay. Who went with you to the green store?
No one.
Who did you speak to?
I cannot recall the person's name.
What day did you go to the green store?
Probably within that week, I believe it was.
Okay. And it was that trip to the green store, was that recorded?
No, sir.
Okay. Is that in your notes?
No, sir.
Excuse me, in your report?
No, sir.
Okay. You testified that on the night, early morning of January 11th, you had a brief conversation with Deshaun Quarterman.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other than that brief conversation with Deshaun Quarterman, did you speak to Deshaun Quarterman any more about as part of your investigation?
No.
Okay. Mr. Copeland, Kenneth Copeland, you said that you were involved in about I believe the testimony was 4 formal interviews with Mr. Copeland?
I believe so it was. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you have Mr. Copeland's phone number?
No.
Did Mr. Copeland have your phone number?
No.
Did you ever speak on the phone with Mr. Copeland as part of your investigation, other than that first night when Deshaun Quarterman called him and you?
No, I can't recall ever talking to him on the phone.
Okay.
Or interviewing him on the phone. No, sir.
Well, okay, I want to be clear. I'm not saying just an interview. I'm saying talking to him on the phone.
No, sir.
So your testimony is you never spoke to
Not that I
Kenneth
recall.
Copeland on the phone. Not
No,
that
sir.
you recall, or you never did it.
I can recall if I ever did. So I think I did not talk to him over the phone.
Okay. Are there any mentions in your notes, your reports about speaking to Mr. Copeland on the phone?
No, sir.
All right. And Kelvin Watts, you know him as Shell Kel, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you ever interview Kelvin Watts as part of your investigation?
Yes, I did.
Okay. When was that?
I cannot recall when it was, but he we want to go into detail, but it was.
I'm not asking you what was said. I'm
Okay.
just asking when you spoke to him.
I cannot recall. He was brought on an unrelated case.
Okay. So as part of this investigation, I'm asking, not unrelated cases.
Well, I asked him because he was there at the time of the incident. So I asked him roundabout questions, and he was like, "Don't want to talk about it."
So let me ask you this. In your investigation, were you able to determine Kelvin Watts' whereabouts on January 10th, 2015 at 7:20 p.m.?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to object based on hearsay. It would necessarily require it.
Overruled.
And where was Kelvin Watts?
He was at the location, incident location.
Where Donovan Thomas was shot?
Yes, sir.
How far away was he from Donovan Thomas?
Your Honor, may we approach? I need to.
You may.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Investigator Thorpe, how did you determine that Kelvin Watts was on the scene?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to assuming facts not in evidence, and I'm going to ask that a proper foundation be laid.
That's overruled.
The video surveillance footage of a person coming inside the barbershop was presented to the media, placed on the news, and his father called me and notified me that the person I'm looking for with the assault rifle is actually his son, Kelvin Watts.
Oh, okay. Let me try to clear this up. Okay. Investigator Thorpe, could you does Donovan Thomas Sr. have multiple sons?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. Would looking at your report refresh your recollection about who was in the barbershop?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please turn to page 3 of your report where it talks about January 11, 2015. I'm assuming your page 3 is the same one I'm looking at. Do you see where it says on January 11, 2015 at approximately 18:45 hours?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you read that to yourself and see if that refreshes your recollection about who was in the barbershop with the gun?
Yeah, okay. Yes, sir.
Okay. Who was in fact the individual that was in the barbershop with the gun?
Okay. DeMonte Thomas.
Okay. And is that another one of Donovan Thomas's senior's children?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Kelvin Watts, I'm going to ask again, do you know whether he was at the scene or not?
No, sir.
You don't know one way or another?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you ever specifically ask him, without giving me the answer, did you ever specifically ask him when you interviewed him about a
Objection,
different case?
relevance as to whether he asked him, it would.
Overruled.
Did you ever specifically ask him if he was at the scene or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you able to identify, you've seen the surveillance video, correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to identify all of the people that were standing by Mr. Donovan Thomas Jr. when he was shot?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any other defense attorneys with questions for this witness? Mr. Williams, questions for this witness? Okay. Is there redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective Thorpe, you were asked on cross-examination about an alibi that Mr. Copeland gave at the time of Donovan Thomas's murder. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
And do you recall exactly what it was that Mr. Copeland told you he was doing at the time of Donovan Thomas's murder?
Yes, if I recall correctly, he stated that he was home in the bed asleep.
Okay. So did he ever tell you that he was at the Green store at the time of Donovan Thomas's murder?
No, ma'am.
Did he ever tell you he was at the McDonald's at the time of Donovan Thomas's murder?
No, ma'am.
Did Mr. Copeland offer you, let me ask you this, was that information that he gave to you about his whereabouts captured on the video surveillance in the interview room?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Copeland ever tell you anything different about what he was doing or where he was at the time of Donovan Thomas's murder outside the interview room?
No, ma'am.
Now, how many, you said you worked 300 homicides or more during your time with APD?
Yes, ma'am.
How is it that you give to the district attorney's office the results of your investigation? Do you normally just turn over your notepad or do you summarize it in a report?
I summarize in a report.
Okay.
It's called the lead investigator supplement.
All right. You were also asked on cross-examination about the time it takes to get from the murder scene to the Green store. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Kenneth Copeland ever give you any indication that immediately before or immediately after the murder, he was at the Green store?
No, ma'am. He never gave me any indication. So
In all of your interactions with Kenneth Copeland, did he ever change his whereabouts as to where he was at the time of the murder?
no, ma'am. He did not.
You were also asked whether you interviewed Kelvin Watts.
Yes, ma'am.
And when you said it was in the course of another investigation, do you recall what investigation that was?
Yes, ma'am.
What investigation was that?
It was a homicide.
A homicide of who?
I can't recall the victim's name. It was a young lady.
Okay. Now, as it related to that particular homicide, did you interview Shannon Stillwell?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you were asked on cross-examination about asking Kelvin Watts his whereabouts at the time Donovan Thomas was murdered, do you have any indication, or did you see any indication on the surveillance footage that you saw that Kelvin Watts was there at the scene of the murder?
Not definitively, no, ma'am.
Okay. And regarding the victim of the murder that you were speaking to Kelvin Watts and that you interviewed Shannon Stillwell about, was that victim Tiara Jones?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
When you take notes about what you learn in your investigation, do you include every negative outcome that you have? In other words, I went to this store and found nothing, this store and found nothing. Do you include all of that every time in your investigative summary?
No, ma'am.
Would you keep that information or share that information if you were asked about it?
Yes, ma'am.
You would share it?
Yes, ma'am.
So why don't you put all of the negative information, like in terms of not having found anything, in your investigative report?
I try and keep my supplements relative to the investigation. So if they wish to do a follow-up, they say, okay, this is where he went. He got this. Let me go back and verify this, verify that.
You were asked on cross-examination as well about questions that you spoke with Mr. Copeland regarding.
Yes, ma'am.
And specifically, if he rented a gray Infiniti.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any knowledge that Jeffrey Williams had rented a gray Infiniti at that time?
No, ma'am. None.
And when you say that you met Kenneth Copeland at the back of police headquarters,
Yes, ma'am.
did you see how he arrived?
No, ma'am.
Were you given information about how he arrived from anyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you given any information about who all was in the car when he arrived?
No, ma'am.
Did your questions regarding what kind of car that Mr. Copeland may have owned or rented have anything to do with what you believe he arrived in?
Yes, ma'am.
You, when asked on cross-examination about Mr. Copeland's whereabouts at the time of Donovan Thomas's murder, do you know or have personal knowledge of where his cell phone records indicate he was at the time of the murder? Personal knowledge, do you?
No, ma'am. I do not have personal knowledge.
Did you see yourself and Mr. Copeland on the screen when you were asked on cross-examination about defense? Jeffrey Williams Defense Exhibit number 241D?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see the cell phone on the table before you in front of Mr. Copeland?
Yes, ma'am.
When I asked you earlier if Mr. Copeland carried a cell phone, did you recall at the time that he had one during the interview?
I didn't recall that he had one during the time of the interview.
When you video record interviews such as this one and others, does the video recording of the interviews, do they serve to preserve information that you may not remember later?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you turn over all of the video recordings of interviews that you do to the district attorney's office and to be provided in discovery?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Kenneth Copeland make any effort, to your knowledge, to hide the phone that he had with him during the interview?
No, ma'am.
Sustained.
Did you see Kenneth Copeland attempt to cover up the phone?
No, ma'am.
Did you see Kenneth Copeland make any moves to conceal the phone from your eyesight?
No, ma'am.
Do you recall whether Kenneth Copeland pulled out that phone during the interview and offered to show you stuff? Do you recall?
No, I do not recall him doing that.
Would looking at that interview, a certain portion of it, refresh your memory?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know who or where it is that you got the name Walter Lee Maddox?
I believe,
Without saying what someone said, just do you believe?
law enforcement database.
Okay. Prior to Kenneth Copeland telling you, did you know that his brother drove a Dodge Charger?
No, ma'am.
I'm going to show you what has been admitted as State's Exhibit. And since I'm not playing sound, are you able to remember whether or not Kenneth Copeland pulled out his phone to show you information by looking at this exhibit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is your memory refreshed after reviewing it?
Yes, ma'am. So what? Yes, ma'am.
During the interview, did Kenneth Copeland, and it's 378 Yankee Alpha, during that interview, did Kenneth Copeland pull out his cell phone and show you and offer to show you information?
I believe he did. Yes, ma'am.
Did you see him pulling it out and extending it towards you?
No, he was mostly keying it up himself.
Was he keying it up himself in front of you, under your nose?
Yes, ma'am.
During the course of your investigation, was it common or uncommon for the people you were interviewing to essentially key up information under your nose?
No, ma'am. It's not unusual.
Did anyone else do that during the course of your investigation?
No, ma'am.
When you turned your file over to the district attorney's office in 2016, did you also turn over the recordings that included the interviews that you conducted?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you were asked about the auto parts stores by the auto parts store and the other places in the area, nearby where the murder of Mr. Thomas occurred, at the time that you were investigating the homicide, do you recall what time it was or when in proximity to the murder that Kenneth Copeland said he was at the McDonald's?
He said afterwards.
And did he also give you information about persons who were at the McDonald's with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Through your investigation, did you attempt to and gain phone records for people who he said were at the McDonald's with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Was, according to Mr. Copeland, Demekion Garlington at the McDonald's at the same time he was?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Copeland, to your memory, give you information during any one of his interviews about where he and other people went after leaving the McDonald's?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was that?
Jeffrey Williams' residence.
Okay. Did you determine the location of that residence after speaking with Mr. Copeland?
Yes, ma'am.
When you reviewed the video surveillance at the Texaco back in January, when you first reviewed it, what were you looking for?
Looking for any one of those vehicles being in the parking lot near the gas pumps.
When you first reviewed the surveillance footage at the Texaco, did you know what Diamante Kendrick looked like?
No, ma'am.
Did you find any evidentiary value when you first reviewed it, or see or anything that you felt you needed to follow up on as it related to people going into the Texaco?
No, not till afterwards.
And when you say not until afterwards, what do you mean?
When the case file was turned over to Senior 88 Mike Sprinkle, we started going over it, and he opened up the interior cameras and saw subjects of interest.
Your Honor, he's not talking. Go ahead.
He saw people of interest walking in.
When you say he opened up the interior cameras, can you explain what you mean?
Yes. We downloaded both interior and exterior cameras. What I was looking for on the exterior cameras was possible a tag for the vehicle that was used in the drive-by, or that if the car posted up at the gas station, circled the block, how many people was inside the vehicle, and if I can identify the people inside the vehicle. Senior 88 Sprinkle, he said, let's go and look and see if anybody was inside the store. And he said once he opened up the interior cameras, that's when we noticed people of interest that he started developing.
Okay. Does 88 Sprinkle was his knowledge of that digital system similar to yours or greater than yours?
Greater than mine.
All right. At the time that Mr. Copeland left the police department after your interview, did he leave with his brother who was waiting for him?
Yes, he did, ma'am.
Do you know whether or not he was taken home by that brother?
I do not know their destination afterwards.
Now, when you looked at the video surveillance at the Texaco initially, did you find anything of evidentiary value? Did you recognize anything of evidentiary value?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Were you able to get a license plate on any vehicles?
No, ma'am.
Did you do anything to intentionally hold back or withhold anything in the notes you talked about on cross-examination? Did you intentionally destroy them or anything?
No, ma'am.
How long did you run the footage on the local news media in order to get information about this murder?
I think they ran the media, the news station makes that determination. I think they run it for like a week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
And if we put in a request, they'll run it again.
Did you all put in a request for it to be run again? Do you recall?
I don't recall.
Did you put that in the report that you ran, that video, for purposes of finding out who was in the barbershop at the time of the murder?
Yes, ma'am.
And what other kind of information, you were asked on cross what you didn't put in your report. What other kind of information did you put in your report?
That was it.
No, I mean in terms of, did you detail who you interviewed?
Yes, ma'am. I detailed who I interviewed.
Did you detail the times that you interviewed them?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail information that was shared during the interviews?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail your efforts to, for instance, follow up on who shot up Mr. Copeland's house?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail information about people that you initially investigated but ultimately chose or decided not to charge?
I believe so, ma'am. Yes.
Did you put information about Quintez Griffin in your interview,
Yes, ma'am.
in your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put the information about Spencer Wright in your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put that Spencer Wright initially gave you a name, Nicholas,
Yes,
in your
ma'am.
report?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put information in your report about talking to Mr. Hendricks?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put in your report what Mr. Hendricks told you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put in your report information about talking to Mr. Sanders?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put in your report what he told you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report each time that you talked with Mr. Copeland prior to 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Why did you detail each time as opposed to just putting one time?
Because each time it was a different time and different interview.
Did you detail in your report the type of shell casings that were found on the scene of the Donovan Thomas murder?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report the type of shell casings that were found at Van Ira?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report whether you conducted an informal or formal interview with Diamante Thomas?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report what Diamante Thomas told you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report information regarding the video surveillance that you captured from Hair Unlimited Barbershop?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report social media posts that you investigated?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report the type of the type of vehicle described by persons that you interviewed?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put in your report information about what your investigation revealed were retaliatory shootings after the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you only interview Kenneth Copeland while he was outside of custody and voluntarily came in, or did you interview him after he had been taken into custody for other things?
After he'd been taken into custody for other things.
Did you detail in your report going to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport to try and find information provided to you by Kenneth Copeland?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail the date that you went to Hartsfield-Jackson?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail who went with you to Hartsfield-Jackson?
Yes, ma'am.
Who went with you to Hartsfield Jackson?
Detective Summer Benton.
What date did you go to Hartsfield Jackson?
I can't recall. I can look at the note.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm showing you your report.
Okay. I believe it was June 11th, 2015.
Did you detail in your report who it was that suggested meeting you at the homicide office the first time that you spoke with Kenneth Copeland?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that you requested Kenneth Copeland to meet you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that he agreed?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that you were not able to find any information about the rental that Jeffrey Williams did when you and Summer Benton went?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report the date and time that you interviewed Demekion Garlington?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report what he told you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that you interviewed Justin Cobb?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report the date and time that you interviewed him?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report the names of the persons that Kenneth Copeland gave you that were people you found of interest in the investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report where it was that Kenneth Copeland advised you that he got that information?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report information about a social media site called Death to Snake Ends?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And did you detail in your report what it was? Your Honor, he was asked on cross-examination what he did not put in his report. I'm asking what information he did put. So I don't know how it's cumulative when this has not been covered by me, but it was covered on cross.
Overruled.
Did you detail in your report when it was that you saw that social media posting about Death to Snake Ends?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report who all was present at the time you interviewed Diamante Kendricks?
Yes, ma'am.
And when was it that you interviewed Diamante Kendricks? Do you recall?
I can't recall the exact date.
Which showing you your report refresh your memory.
Yes, ma'am. It was October 6th.
Of 2015?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. October 6th, 2015.
Did you detail the time that
Yes,
you
ma'am.
interviewed? Why did you detail something so simple as the time that you interviewed him?
You know, exact time, the time that we started and the time we ended.
Did you detail in your report that Spencer Wright admitted giving you the false name of Nicholas Robinson?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you detail in your report when and against whom you took out arrest warrants for this case?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Other than Mr. Copeland's brother, did you see anybody else accompanying Mr. Copeland at the time that he came to see you?
No, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that Mr. Copeland came to see you with his girlfriend, Deshaun Quarterman?
Yes, ma'am.
So I got an indication just now that somebody was having a hard time hearing through this system. So whomever that was, can we just test it now? Because I suspect it's not this system. It's that people aren't holding this close enough to their mouths. So I wanted to just have y'all see if you can. Okay, so people, can you?
I think the issue is people, I don't know what changed since the previous board, but I think people are speaking too softly and holding it too far away.
Well, that's probably because I constantly tell at least Miss Love to keep it down because I suspect that she gets loud enough sometimes that the jury can hear her. But with regard to everybody else, maybe she needs to talk more quietly and the rest of us need to talk more loudly. So we'll try to do that and hold it closer. Okay, sorry about that. Well, we're about to talk about it anyway out here because we haven't resolved anything.
Your Honor, with the court checking its notes, could the court just give us the date that was?
Well, I gotta find it first.
Okay.
It I think would have been in that week in August, right? That we had the non-jury week. Okay. It is too hot now.
Mr. Kendricks
Said in the interview.
let me be specific. Did Mr. Kendricks tell you that he did not remember what day did you interview him? Did you indicate in your report, reflect in your report, what day you interviewed him? Did Mr. Kendricks, did you ask him where he was or what he was doing on January 10th? And did he reply he couldn't even remember that day?
No, I'm not going to allow that. And you said yourself you think you can maybe ask that through another witness. So ask it through another witness because that's more the type of thing you should ask on direct.
Okay.
Then redirect.
No problem. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Mr. Kendrick.
What did I say?
There's no S at the end.
No S at the end.
No S at the end.
Okay. Anything else before we get this witness back and the jury back? Are you about to wrap up with this witness? Okay. And then how long is your next witness going to be?
I'm trying to see how fast they can actually be here because our next witness was one we had on that list.
So you don't have another witness here and ready to go, even though I have said over and over and over and over again to have your next witness ready to go?
Even though our best efforts have been made to make that happen, the person, I'm not going to represent that they're not. I just want to find out where they are before I say something different.
Can we know who the mystery witness is?
I intend that it will be G. Baker that we put on the list this morning.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
G. Baker, who arrested Quindarius Sabry.
G. Baker, I think is what she's saying.
Yes. Yep.
And, okay, well, is there somebody else if that witness isn't available?
Let's see.
I mean, frankly, I'd rather that a witness get I don't want anybody inconvenienced, but I'd rather you have an extra witness here than we have an hour left with the jury, but nothing to fill their time.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyway, well, so how much longer are you going to have with this witness?
Not an hour, about 30 minutes, maybe, not even that long.
30 minutes more with this witness?
Judge, 10, 15, I have about, I can count the questions for the court.
Okay, again, this is redirect.
It is. So these are.
I don't want you to count the questions. I just want you to stay focused. Do we have an answer to the question, how long the next witness is away?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, well, let's just continue with the redirect, and then there may or may not be any recross, and then we'll see if the witness is here yet, and they better be. I'm serious. I know. Okay, so let's get the witness and get the jury.
Your Honor, before the jury is brought in, just really quickly, if I may, one of the things I wanted to inquire of one of our investigators about their efforts to secure one of the witnesses and the difficulty that we have had with respect to that witness. I expect that witness will be coming in. It's the one that we've been discussing, but I think it's pertinent information.
Not right now. And frankly, it doesn't matter if you have a particular witness. What you have been instructed is to have enough witnesses to fill the day.
Yes.
Okay? So if one witness is difficult, then you need to have another one lined up.
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's get the jury, please. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Love.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Thorpe,
Yes, ma'am.
did you detail in your report an incident regarding Kenneth Copeland, his child's mother, and his child being shot at on February 19th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report the description of the vehicle that Kenneth Copeland said participated in that shooting?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that after that shooting, you spoke with both Kenneth Copeland and his child's mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that happened on February 21st, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report, you were asked regarding by Mr. Steele, you were asked about your questions to Kenneth Copeland and the gray Infinity or Maxima. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report whether or not you were looking for a Pontiac Bonneville around February 21st, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report asking Kenneth Copeland about waiting so long to talk about the date of the homicide incident?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report him stating that he was not a snitch?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that only after you talked to Kenneth Copeland did you begin to learn or investigate Jeffrey Williams' rental of that Hertz Infinity?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report the information that you got from one witness that may or may not have been consistent with the information you got from another witness?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I'm going to object to this line of questioning under 403.
And Your Honor, my response is when the question was asked about what he did not put in his report, I think it's important that since that the jury is aware of what all he did put in his report.
Overruled.
Did you detail in your report who it was that was in the room with you at the time that you interviewed Quindarius Zachary?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that you interviewed him on August 5th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that you interviewed Diamante Kendricks on October 6th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that the date that you spoke with Spencer Wright or Nicholas Robinson at the time was October 19th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report confronting Mr. Wright about giving a false name?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report taking Mr. Wright anywhere for him to show you particular places?
Yes, ma'am.
You were asked on cross-examination regarding the date that you took out warrants, and you said that it was October 20th, 2015. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that you took those warrants out the day after you went with Spencer Wright to a certain location on
Yes.
October 19th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report what you observed when you arrived on scene on January 10th, 2015 at 21:15 hours?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report seeing yellow crime scene tape restricting pedestrian and vehicle traffic into the area?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report who you met with when you reported on scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report who escorted you through the scene and showed you tangible evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report being advised that Mr. Thomas Jr. had passed away from his injuries?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report the lighting on the streets of 330 McDaniel Street at the time you arrived?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that the lighting did not require additional support lights for processing?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your reports that there were 3 different shell casings on the street, 3 different types of shell casings on the street?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report information that you got from the anonymous person about what may have led to the shooting?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report that you were going to have an autopsy conducted by the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you detail in your report the date of birth and address of each of the victims, including Reginald Hendricks and Cordarius Sanders?
Yes, ma'am.
How many of the notepads when you describe on cross-examination the notepad that you keep notes in through your investigations, what kind of notepad is that? Is that a big notebook like the one in front of me or a small one?
Small one, ma'am.
How many notepads have you kept throughout your time as a homicide investigator?
Relatively none. Once I get through transcribing all my notes over into my case file, I usually refurbish those notepads into working other scenes with other people when I'm not the lead.
How many notepads have you kept? Have you made over the years?
Made over the years, probably close to 200, 300.
You were asked about the things that you did not put in your report by on cross-examination. Is there anything that you left out, any other things that you left out of your report?
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, I think that that's all that I have of this witness.
All right, thank you. Is there recross from anyone? Mr. Sharp, Mr. Steele.
Investigator Thorpe, first of all, I just want to clear this up. You spoke about interviewing Kelvin Watts in relation to the murder of Tiara Jones.
Yes.
Okay. And then Ms. Love asked you if that was the case you interviewed Mr. Stillwell about, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's be clear. You interviewed Mr. Stillwell as a victim in that case, correct?
Correct, sir.
Okay. Okay. The Green Store, that is the location when Kenneth Copeland spoke to you that he claimed to be at. No, let me back up. Kenneth Copeland told you that he was not present at a murder, correct?
Correct.
He told you when you spoke to him in these interrogations that just prior to the murder,
Interviews. Go ahead, sir.
in the interviews, just prior to the murder, his claim was he was at the Green store.
Yes, I believe that was one, and he said he was in the bed.
Okay.
Also, he was at home in the bed.
And then went to the Green store.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's the store that,
Object as to mischaracterization of information that has, of the evidence.
that's absolutely not a mischaracterization. What time did he get out of bed?
I do not know.
Good.
Okay. So after he got out of bed, according to him, he went to the Green store.
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's the store that's a block and a half or 2 blocks away from where Mr. Thomas was shot.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then his story to you was after the shooting, he was at the McDonald's.
Yes, sir.
All right. Over the last 30 minutes or so, I'm not going to go through all of them. Ms. Love asked you about 75 different things that are in your report, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The bottom line is your report is thorough, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, your report includes you and Investigator Summer Benton going to the airport
Yes, sir.
to look for rental records in the name of Jeffrey Williams from Hertz Rental or from any rental car company at the airport.
Correct.
Okay. And the reality is at that time, you did not find any records, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That was a negative. You received negative results.
Correct.
Okay. But despite the fact that you got negative results from the rental companies at the airport, you still put your efforts to find evidence in the report, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So going to the airport, looking for rental records, not finding a major report, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But going to the Green store, looking for surveillance and not finding it, that didn't make your report.
Yes, sir.
Going to the McDonald's, looking for surveillance and not finding it, that didn't make the report.
Yes, sir.
Going to the going to the AutoZone or the auto parts store right next to the McDonald's and not filing surveillance, that didn't make the report.
Yes, sir.
Your testimony seems to be the only things that didn't make your report.
Your Honor, I object to the characterization of the testimony. The jury can hear what the testimony
You were just
was.
asked by Ms. Love if anything else didn't make the report, and you said no, correct?
Yes, sir.
So your testimony is the only 3 things that didn't make your report are going to the McDonald's, going to the Green store, and going to the auto parts store looking for surveillance.
Yes, sir.
And we can't find your notes.
Correct, sir.
No further questions.
All right.
Your Honor,
Yes.
Your Honor, may I ask just one, based on what was just asked, may I ask just, okay.
Come on, Mr. Steele.
You have your supplemental report in front of you that Mr. Shark gave you by any chance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the jurors some of them may not understand this, law enforcement, some may not. So I just want to ask you some questions about reports, okay?
Yes, sir.
You testified already. You made it clear that report writing is something that you studied, you were taught, and you know it from your 30 years of experience. It's critical, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's critical because people rely on what you do, right?
Objection, Your Honor, as to the characterization about people lying on.
Overruled.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Because you're doing the work, and then later, people like Ms. Love.
It's not relevant. People like Ms. Love and.
What's your question going to be?
Prosecutors rely on what you do, right?
Yes, sir.
And oftentimes they're not with you when you're doing it.
Yes, sir.
And people like me who represent people charged with crimes, we rely on what you do. We read your reports. You know that, right?
Yes, sir.
Judges like the Honorable Judge Whitaker listens to things that you say from reports, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And through that process, you want to make sure that you dictate, that you put into your reports everything you can that you did in the case that's material, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, at the bottom of each report, you have to sign and you take an oath and you swear, right?
Yes, sir.
That the report is true, correct?
Yes, sir.
Correct,
Yes, sir.
legible,
Yes, sir.
and complete.
Yes, sir.
And that's what you did in this case.
Yes, sir.
And you tell the jurors and you put in all the details of what you did, whether it was negative, positive, or whether it had to get further investigation or not. You put it into the reports, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you want to be fair to everybody and explain to them what you do, right?
Yes, sir.
What you do is important.
Yes, sir.
By not putting in anything, because there's no mention, and if there is a mention, just tell me I missed it. There's no mention of getting the McDonald's video in your report. Am I true?
Yes, sir. You're right.
And there's no mention of getting the video of what we're calling the green store, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're going back approximately 9 years, 8 years, 9.5 years, whatever the date is, to your memory of when you went to the McDonald's, right?
Yes, sir.
But you can't remember who you spoke with at the McDonald's, right?
Yes, sir.
And to be fair to you, are you telling this jury on your oath that McDonald's told you that the day before or 2 days before, we don't have that video?
Your Honor, objection is to the question. It was asked and answered, and to ask if he's telling him under oath it's to harass and embarrass.
Well, overruled.
Okay, what was that, sir?
You're relying on your memory, right?
Yes, sir.
And your memory, I'm not trying to argue how good or bad your memory is, but the reason you write the reports is so you have something contemporaneous, meaning at the time, right?
Yes, sir.
That's why you bring your notepad, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in your notepad that you brought with you to the McDonald's, right?
Yes, sir.
And you wrote down who you spoke with, right?
Yes, sir.
You got a telephone number in case you had to follow up, correct?
Yes, sir.
You saw their videos to ensure that they were correct, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you're not going to take somebody's word for it, because they could be telling you the truth, but they could be mistaken, right?
Yes, sir.
And you have all that information in there, right?
Yes, sir.
You might have even taken the video that they had, right?
Objection, Your Honor. That assumes facts not in evidence, and that question was asked and answered regarding the video.
Sustained as asked and answered.
The notes, though, that you keep those as backup in case there is something inadvertently or intentionally left out of your supplemental report, right?
Yes, sir.
But in this particular case, for whatever reason, those notes have vanished, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, do you remember testifying in a case? Do you know who the Honorable Judge Ellerby is
Yes, sir.
in this courthouse? Another judge?
Yes, sir.
Powerful like Judge Whitaker?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember testifying in a case, State of Georgia versus Brandon Kirkland, also
Your
known
Honor,
as Big
objection
Red?
as to relevance.
I don't know what the relevance might be, so I can't
It-
rule on that.
Your Honor, this is a whole other.
Why don't we approach?
Do you remember testifying in or about April 7, 2016 before the Honorable Judge Ellerby in this courthouse in State of Georgia versus Brandon Kirkland, also known as Big Red, Jonathan Kirkland, also known as Prue, P-R-U?
Yes, sir.
And you're under the same oath that you're under today, fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember the prosecutor in that case being Miss Love?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember under questioning by the Honorable Maxwell Shart in that case?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember explaining that your notes were also not around? Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember explaining that once an arrest is made by you, you shred your notes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in this case, you didn't shred your notes. You can't find them. Is that true?
Correct.
All right. Now, what does refurbishing notes mean? Is that
No,
go ahead.
refers to notepad.
Okay, so
reusing the same notepad.
So instead, if you're writing about your and my going to lunch on Notepad, but then you're going to do another day that you're going to eat lunch with the Honorable Keith Adams, you would rip up the parts that you met with me so you have a refurbished or clean notepad to talk about when you went to lunch with Mr. Adams. Is that what you're saying?
No, basically, I take a new notepad and I may use it as a notepad as I'm assisting another detective who is the lead. So, or I'm going out on a suicide or a kidnapping or anything death-related investigation. So I'll just use that notepad instead of taking a brand new one.
Sure.
And using that one.
So the empty sheets is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. And what do you do with the sheets that you wrote about notes on this case? That's the shred?
On this case, I didn't do anything with those. I just can't find the notepad itself.
This case was preserved, but it vanished.
Okay, talking about the Kirkland case.
No, talking about our case today that you're sworn under.
Okay.
That's the one that vanished. You can't find it. Okay.
Correct.
Now, I want to talk with you. Since we don't have the notes, you didn't give those notes to the district attorney's office, correct?
No, sir.
All right. So all we have to go on, all the jury has, is your memory that we don't have that recording for the McDonald's, right?
Yes, sir.
Same question for the Green Store, just your word.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, with regards to questions that you asked on redirect examination by Ms. Love, that there were certain people in this case that you charged with murder on or about October 20th, 2015. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
One of those people was Mr. Sledge, who came out, right?
Yes, sir.
One of those people was Mr. Copeland, correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember stating that you're aware that the district attorney's office did not charge the offense of murder of Donovan Thomas to Mr. Sledge? You aware of that? You remember those questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And same with Mr. Copeland. They did not charge him with that either. You never charged Jeffrey Williams with murder of Donovan Thomas, fair to say?
Yes, sir.
You never charged Jeffrey Williams with any crimes, fair to say?
Yes, sir. Fair to say.
You know the district attorney's office hasn't charged Jeffrey Williams with the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Well, actually, I'll let him go with that one. I thought he was going to ask a different question. I withdraw the objection.
All right.
You're aware of that, correct?
Okay, repeat that again, sir.
Sure. You're aware that the district attorney's office through the grand jury did not charge Jeffrey Williams with the murder of Donovan Thomas. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, do you have any information that you can share with the jury that Jeffrey Williams was in possession of the Infiniti rental car, gray, from Hertz on January 9th of 2015?
Nothing that I discovered. No, sir.
Same question for the next day, January 10th of 2015. Any information you could share with this jury that Jeffrey Williams was in possession of that same rental Infiniti vehicle?
No, sir. Not on my investigation. No, sir.
January 11th. You realize that's the day it's returned?
Yes, sir.
You don't remember? Okay. Do you have any information to share with this jury that Jeffrey Williams...
Your Honor, as it relates to this portion regarding the objection about the scope, I would object that it goes beyond.
Sustained.
I have no other questions.
All right. Very briefly, Ms. Love.
Thank you. And Detective Thorpe, I know nobody in here believes that I'm going to be brief, but I really am going to be brief. With respect to what Mr. Steele just asked you about not putting anything else of value into the report or leaving anything out, did you put in your report that you took gunshot residue samples off Kenneth Copeland's hands at the time that you interviewed him?
I believe I didn't.
You did not?
I believe I did. I can't recall.
Could you please look at your report and see if it refreshes your memory?
What page would you be looking at, ma'am? I'm sorry.
Just the page where you talk about your January 10th, 11th rather, interview with Kenneth Copeland.
All right.
Jurors, I'm going to remind y'all, if there's some time like this where there's a pause when a witness is looking at something or looking for something and y'all feel the need to stand up and stretch, please feel free to do that, okay? Especially towards the end of the day.
No, ma'am.
As you sit here today, do you recall whether you did a gunshot residue test on Kenneth Copeland's hands?
Yes, I did.
How do you know that you did?
By the video.
Okay.
I believe it was on the video.
And was that something substantial that you considered during your investigation that you did
Yes, ma'am.
gunshot residue?
Yes, ma'am.
Why didn't you put it in your report then?
Just overlook.
Okay. Now, did you put in your report all of the information that you included or that you asked Kenneth Copeland about in your interviews with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put every piece of information in the report that you talked to? And when I say every piece, I mean, did you put every detail of your interview with Kenneth Copeland into your report?
No, ma'am. That's why the video is included and say refer to details
Okay.
from the video.
Did you put in your report that after you took gunshot residue from Kenneth Copeland's hands, that you resumed your interview with him?
No, ma'am.
Did you resume your interview with him at about 4:00 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, you were asked on recross by Mr. Sharp, I believe, whether Kenneth Copeland said after he got up, he went to the green store. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put in your report exactly what Kenneth Copeland told you he did in chronological order after he got up?
No, ma'am.
Is it recorded on the video?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Kenneth Copeland tell you that after he got up, he left his girl's house and that his brother gave him his car?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he tell you that after he got up, he went and got a Band-Aid for his mouth?
Your Honor, objection. This is outside the scope of cross.
Your Honor, I'm asking information that Mr. Sharp pulled up regarding what Kenneth Copeland did after he got up. Mr. Sharp specifically asked him, did he tell you he went to the green store after he got up?
Overruled, but let's keep in mind that we're on redirect at this point. Ask if whatever the necessary few questions are, and let's be done with this witness.
Yes, Your Honor. On January the 11th, while you're talking to Kenneth Copeland, do you tell him exactly what time Mr. Thomas Jr. gets shot?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So do you have any way of getting from Mr. Copeland exactly how long it was before or after Mr. Thomas got shot that he actually got up from his girlfriend's house?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Steele asked you, at the time that you made the arrests in October of 2015, did you have the Hertz rental records that the DA's office were able to get?
No, ma'am, I did not.
And on recross, you were asked by Mr. Steele whether or not you charged Jeffrey Williams with any crime.
No, I did not charge.
in October 2015.
No, I did not.
At the time that you took out those warrants in October 2015, did you know that Jeffrey Williams had rented the gray Infiniti?
No, I did not.
I have no more questions.
You were asked about if your report included verbatim what Kenneth Copeland said to you in the interviews. Remember that?
Yes,
Okay, you didn't need to put what he said verbatim because it's on a video, right?
correct.
You were asked about the gunshot residue. Whether you put that collection of the gunshot residue from Kenneth Copeland, whether you put that in your report, right?
Correct.
And you didn't because you didn't need to because that was on video, correct?
Correct.
All right, where is the video of you going to McDonald's and asking for surveillance?
Objection, Your Honor. That was asked and answered about there's
Overruled.
assuming facts
Where's
not in
the-
evidence
where's
about
that
a
video?
video.
Overruled.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't have a video of myself going into McDonald's.
Okay.
So that was never recorded on a video, or I did not do a digital audio recording of that either.
Cool, thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you. You are excused. Do you have another witness available?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, well, this is ideally and far too early to be finishing the day. I will say I have an email that says that a fire alarm is going to go off at 5 p.m. That's a test. So I guess we'll at least avoid that. Sometimes they go on for a long time and they're really loud. So ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all at 9 a.m. Remember, only the evidence that comes through the witnesses on the stand in this case is what you are supposed to be deciding this case based on. So don't talk to anybody about this case. Don't allow anybody else to talk to you about the case. Don't research in any way, internet or otherwise. Don't watch, listen to, absorb in any way any kind of media accounts about this case or anybody involved in it. And I will see y'all in the morning. Thank you. All right, a couple of matters. First of all, Miss Love, that needs to be the absolute last time that you don't have enough witnesses to carry us at least until 5. And if it happens again and there is something less than an earthquake, an 8-car pileup, somebody died, 3 people died, and so none of the witnesses were available,
Yes.
I may just say you can't have that witness because at this point in this incredibly long trial, to have to end at 4:25 is not a good use of anybody's time. Do you understand?
I do.
All right. I have, and have yes, some of y'all also got, and y'all who didn't, I forwarded a very lengthy email from Miss Merchant regarding Mr. Arnold, who is her client, and the information that she received very recently that he might be called as a witness this week. And it appears, and I know you know this, Ms. Love, because you got the email too, but that she told the state a long time ago that she was not going to be available certain dates. And she also asked, because I have reviewed in camera portions of her correspondence with you at this point, that you give her at least 7 days notice if you were going to call or when you were going to call Mr. Arnold. So she's on vacation. She has a leave of absence. I don't know what your plan is, but have you worked that out?
Your Honor, what I asked, and I'm not sure if it was conveyed, was whether there was anyone else that she was willing to let come in and in her stead. But I can tell you that the reason that we moved up the time frame for her client has to do with our
Challenges with other witnesses?
Yes. And so given that, I understand that Ms. Merchant wants 7 days in advance.
Well, that's not as much the issue as the fact that if she can't be here and he's still going to be on the stand, then you need to not start him.
Right. I understand that. If she had someone that he was okay with being here, then, you know, and that was
all right. So you and she have worked that out then?
No, I haven't had a chance to talk to her. I had someone talking to her on my behalf. I'll respond to her
All right.
and say that because
But
if she
I
didn't,
I haven't responded, even though it got sent directly to me, because I don't normally do that. But if you would please let her know that, as far as I'm concerned, she's not expected to cut her leave
I
off.
understand. No, I
that
understand.
You need to work around that.
And we were, yes,
Okay.
I was, yes,
All right.
that's fine.
A couple of other things. So I haven't been able to review in full the briefs that Ms. Abbasi and the state provided on the overt acts, but with regard to one of them, and I don't even know if you have either because she, I think, sent it this morning, but there was indication in her letter brief that the issue at the jail may have been a self-defense issue. And so I would like to see the video
Okay.
and find out whether there was any evidence at all of a shank being on Bussy or whatever his name is.
I think that he took one. I think there was one after, but I will show you the video. I think that that's easy enough to do. We can,
All right.
we can send that to the court.
Okay. And then finally, when I started looking through all of the in-camera looking in camera through all of the correspondence between the state and various attorneys for one-time co-defendants, you know, it's at this point about this thick, which is a lot. And I am wondering, and I know that I'm kind of the one that said, do you want me to do it in camera? But do you have an objection to just providing all of it to the defense? Because frankly, I'd rather they do the work than me. And you may just.
I would prefer if the court would allow us to just review them, given.
All right, I'll trudge through it, but it's going to take me a while because, as y'all know, I'm here with you every day. So, okay. All right, anything else?
I'm going to try and send you that video now.
Which one? Well, we did once, but. So can we try this again? For some reason, I do not know why, this keeps resetting itself to 40% volume today. So it's at 100% now. So let me, okay, then I just have no idea. Okay, so everybody that comes up to the bench, hold it close to your mouth. And also at the same time, talk into the little box for Miss Winfrey. We'll do the best we can. And if there is ever a time, I'll just remind the defendants that you cannot hear what is being said. Let me know and we can review for you what it was that was said. Okay, everybody understand that? Yes? Yes. Okay, wonderful. All right. Is there any other matter in the half hour extra that we have that anybody wants to bring up or deal with? Everybody just wants to go home.
I'll put this in writing just for ease, but on it's pronounced Nyson. The firearms Nyson. NIBIN, on the NIBIN report. For two different officers, I just want to alert the state again, just as a courtesy to Mr. Williams and everyone. There are two firearms that are listed that were seized in the unlawful search of Mr. Williams' home. I'll put it in writing again, but I just, I'm not trying to delay things, so I just want to make the state aware, and I will put it in writing, but you have it on for two witnesses.
Make sure those witnesses don't mention anything about those firearms. Yes, make it clear because he's bringing it to your attention. I'm bringing it to your attention. These are professionals anyway, so once you tell them that should not happen. Okay.
Thank you. And we have here.
All right. Yes.
Assuming QZ is not here tomorrow, and is the plan that we are just going down the list that was provided this morning? Is that,
I don't know what the plan is.
I'm just trying to figure
Who
out
are
what
your-
materials to bring tomorrow.
Your Honor, as I said, we have rearranged and are rearranging. And as a result of the change in circumstances, and as we have to rearrange that, we are not putting up who we intended to put up. And so we are rearranging in real time, and we have people doing that and working on that. And so, that's where we are. And I don't know.
All right.
We found out some
You're
information.
so mysterious all the time, Miss Love. Is it your plan, if Mr. Zachary is available, to call him? And if not, could you share with everybody else who you plan to call instead?
Yes, it's our plan to call
Okay.
him if he is available.
All right.
And yes, when I speak with our team to see who is now next up and available tomorrow, I will share that with them.
When will that be?
Well,
It's 4:35 right now. 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock, I think we'd be able to tell because they've been out.
Okay.
Is that a real 6 o'clock? Because we were supposed to get the list yesterday by 8 o'clock, and it didn't come until 5 something this morning. So,
I don't
That's-
know.
I mean, we just need to know what to
yeah.
bring tomorrow.
Your Honor, it's
Well, I mean, it'll at least be somebody off of this list that y'all came up with at 5:57 this morning, right?
yes, and the
Okay.
other
So y'all will know that much. She'll endeavor to do the best she can to get you the other information at 6 once you miss Love.
yes,
It's a big list, Your Honor.
I sure will.
Y'all, we covered some of them today. It's not that big of a list. Y'all are all professionals, and you've been prepping this trial for who knows how long now.
That's what it is.
Okay, anything else?